And that happens a lot where you have a great product, you're so excited for it, but then you can't really get that initial traction. That's absolutely a secret sauce. And so they're going to be much more likely to want to work with you regardless of whether the company is new or not. Tesla, the company, has 10 million followers on Twitter, but Elon Musk has 60 million.
Yeah.
People want to connect with people.
Hey everyone, this is your host Ashish Santhalia on Sales Gambit. In today's episode, we'll actually talk about how founders can do sales for their SaaS startup. And for the same purpose, we have Matt Wolach with us. He is a golf fanatic with over 10 years of experience, founder, and also a host at SaaS Story podcast. Hi Matt, we're really happy to have you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ashish. Yeah, absolutely. I'm super happy to be here.
Great. So Matt, to start with, I'd really start with a very generic question that I ask, everyone, because I'm very interested in their journeys. Would you tell us about your journey that you have gone through over the last 10 years in sales?
Now what I do is I help software founders around the world. I help them understand how they can avoid those same mistakes that I made and how they can scale their companies really, really quickly without having to go through the struggle. It's a lot of fun. I work with 150 plus software founders around the world. And they've become like family to me. To watch them grow their companies and scale and see them hit their goals is what really drives me.
Wow. So you are currently working about 150 founders on an average?
Correct.
As like a batch size or something that you kind of define at your end?
Well, I have a community that I've created from these founders, these clients of mine. They work with me. I help them get up to speed. And they're also part of a community so that all of these founders can not only learn from me, but they can learn from each other. It's really collaborative. It's awesome. When one of them has a great success, we all celebrate it together. When one of them is facing challenges, we all commiserate and then come together to collaborate and figure out how to solve it. It's a really awesome community that gets everybody leveled up.
Sounds like the gold mine of data and plus support and everything, right, from the community. What does it take to
That's the idea.
add it to this community?
Well, we are very exclusive. It is invite only, but you can apply if you are a software founder. You do have the opportunity to apply. It is for B2B only.
Yeah.
But if you are a B2B software founder or top leader, we have an application process. You'll meet with some of our team. You'll get to understand a little bit more, and then we can decide if this is something that will be right for you.
That's really great. Everyone out there will have this opportunity to apply and, be a part of this fantastic community. Great. How they say that success in sales is a result of discipline, dedication, and sacrifice, right? And yet, despite of all of that, sales is still hard to achieve. And what's even more challenging is, let's say, software sales in general. What, in your opinion, you can think of as why selling software is so tricky?
Yeah, that kind of was new to me as well, because I had sold other things. I thought that I knew what I was doing with it, and I couldn't figure out the SaaS sales ballgame.
Okay.
Fortunately, I was able to kind of pull from different learnings from books and articles and really understand how to create the right processes within software. But software is different. It's not something that you're going to sell to somebody and they take it and they go off and they're gone. You need to kind of continually resell them over and over every month. In SaaS, it's a recurring model. So either every month or every year, they're essentially making a decision of if they want to stay with you or not. So your sales is much more focused around how can we create a long-term growth and benefit for this potential prospect, this client that we're going to bring on, this customer we're going to bring on, and how can we make sure that they're going to want to continue to stay with us going forward. That's the only real way to do it. If you don't have that right mindset, it's going to be really difficult. The other thing with software is that it's intangible. It's not like they're buying a car, they can sit in it, they can feel it, they can rev the engine. They're not buying a watch they can put on their hand and see how it looks in the mirror. This is something that they can't really feel or touch or see. And even if they have a trial, it's not really real with all of their real data and all their real people. So software is a much more difficult thing to sell unless you have the right formulas. If you understand how to do it just right, then it really starts to work well.
And that brings me to a very interesting point and, a question that I have been asking myself all this while. Is it really a secret sauce or a formula to sell software? Or is it a bunch of experiments that you run, you try to figure out, you keep evolving every now and then, right? Moving forward. In your opinion, what do you think it is?
That's absolutely a secret sauce. So myself, I tried to figure it out on my own. And let's try this. Nope, that didn't work. Let's go over here. Nope, that didn't work. Ooh, let's try this new thing. And each new thing you try, after you've gone through some trial and error, you start to lose confidence about whether it'll work because you've already had so many of the error part of that trial and error that you start to think maybe this one also is not going to work. And that lack of confidence is crippling because maybe that is the right path, but you don't get far enough down it when you stop. So really just knowing that this is the formula, this is what is going to do it for us. Let's go full steam ahead and make sure that we make it happen. Having that confidence to know that is really key. And so yes, it's one of these things I think a lot of software founders are starting to realize, why should I reinvent the wheel? This has been done before. Why don't I just follow the same formula that company after company after company have done, and we'll be able to see the same type of acceleration, the same type of lift, and the same type of success.
Makes sense. So what you're essentially saying is that any kind of company that sells a software, they can actually follow well-established recipe going forward and really do and scale their SaaS engine. Is that what I should take away from this conversation? One point.
Absolutely.
And again, something that comes to the mind when I hear about the secret recipe, or let's say a general formula that kind of help every SaaS startup grow, is it stage agnostic? Does it really depend on which stage you are at? Can there be different type of approaches for different stages, or is just one thing working across different stages of a life cycle of a SaaS company?
The answer to that is yes. I know you asked an or question, but actually both. So there are hierarchical, overarching philosophies and structures and mindsets that work. But yes, at each stage, there are certainly different strategies and tactics that you should be employing. When you're a startup, you don't need to have a whole ton of people on your sales team. You don't need to spend millions of dollars on personnel trying to grow. You don't need to spend millions of dollars on marketing trying to grow. You can get started relatively easily and cheaply with just a small team or even just yourself to get it launched, get it off the ground, and get some early wins. When you're a big team, you don't want to do the same things that got you there. And that's why a lot of the big teams struggle, is because they kind of keep doing the same things that got them to that level, not realizing that, hey, at this level, it's a different ballgame. You need to figure out what's right now, what's better for you. And so what we talk about is what's your right next thing for where you are at your level. Let's get that employed and rocking.
Makes sense. It is already known, Matt, right, that, as you said already, right, the startups really struggle to make a mark. It's a company that comes in and comes in the already existing category, and they have similar kind of product with, let's say, a bit of differentiation as well. Still, they will really struggle to find the initial customers, right, and having their foothold and trust with the clients. Where do you think the founders fail here? What are they doing wrong today?
Yeah, great question. And that happens a lot where you have a great product, you're so excited for it, but then you can't really get that initial traction. And we see a lot of companies. And so, one of the first breakpoints of where companies kind of start to get an opportunity to be more successful is 10K MRR. This is US dollars. Then 50K, then 84K, because that's $1 million annually. The companies that don't make those breakpoints have a much higher likelihood of not succeeding, of going out of business. But it's all about getting some of those early wins. And you have to make sure that you are building authority, that you're getting people to understand that, one, they have problems. Sometimes your market doesn't know they have a problem. They don't know they have pain. So making sure the market and the people you're talking to individually from that market understands that there is a pain. And then showing them how they can solve it. Now, getting some early wins is tough because a lot of times in sales, you need trust. And how can they trust you if you have just launched? Well, so many times people forget about their own experience. And I'm sure that if you launched this in a certain industry, you probably have an understanding of why that industry needed it. Some people even came directly from that role or from that industry. So use your past experience, use your past stories as a guide. And when you start sharing that, they're not going to think about this as a new company. They're going to think about this as a person who really understands what they are doing. They have confidence in you. Remember, people buy from people. And so they're going to be much more likely to want to work with you, regardless of whether the company is new or not.
Okay, that's a very interesting thought process. What you're saying is, as startup founders, rather than being worried about being a new company on the line, we should really look at the stories that, why we are doing this, right? And we should be able to communicate those stories to people out there with clarity on why should they really look at what we have. Correct? It's
Absolutely.
It's actually easier said than done. I hope you already acknowledge that, right? How does a startup founder, let's say, have just started, can get that confidence to actually share their story? That's one. And second, how do they really share their story even? Is it through a website, through a blog, or is there anything specific that you kind of recommend?
Yeah. So first things first, when you just get started, you absolutely need to have lots of conversations with people in your market. Start talking with these people, start meeting them, start learning what they're looking for, what their goals are, what their challenges are, what they hate. All of that, you should absolutely have a clear understanding. Have 20, 30, 40, 50 conversations with these people. It's going to give you a really good idea. But the other thing it's going to do is it's going to give you experience of now you've had so many conversations. You can now see the market as a whole. And you say, a lot of people are really struggling with this, a lot of struggling with this. And by the way, when you start having more conversations, then you're going to say, hey, I've been talking with people in this sector, and they're saying that by and large, this is happening. Now, when you start talking about that, and people start realizing, wow, this person has been talking with a lot of people. They must know this industry inside and out. I don't talk with that many people in this industry. I need to trust this person because they've been all through it. They've been analyzed these conversations. They've looked at this, and now they have a great understanding of where the best fits or the best companies and what they are doing, what those best practices are. So I need to follow them. I need to make sure that I align with them and do what they tell me to do. It's all about building that authority, Ashish. If you can do that through having those conversations, you're going to be able to do really well.
I'll go a bit deeper into this particular area, right, Matt, because this is very interesting. And I think this would be very helpful for the audiences as well. Learning from the conversations is definitely one thing that every startup founder would do, right? They would talk to their customers, their competitors' customers, learn about the industry, the problem and the solution, right? All the time. But still, what I'm getting a sense that you're talking about building a brand about yourself in the beginning. Is that so? Where you telling about those stories and learning out there in the public so that they can know that you exist and they start trusting you? Is that what you're referring to?
Building your public authority is amazing. Your public personal brand is fantastic. If you're a startup founder, you absolutely should be doing that. If you're having those conversations, if you run into somebody that's amazing or somebody who is viewed very highly in the industry, invite them to do a video conversation. Invite them to just say, hey, I want to ask you some questions to learn more about you. Then your market is going to see you on the same level as them. And they're going to say, wow, this person, they're having a deep conversation with them. They're back and forth. They must be the same. They're going to love you for that. And by and large, you're going to start to see that momentum shift of people starting to realize, hey, this person knows what's up. And if you look at it, building a personal brand is really important. Look at Twitter and Tesla. Tesla, the company, has 10 million followers on Twitter, but Elon Musk has 60 million.
Yeah.
People want to connect with people. And no better way than you to get out there and be that personal brand.
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. This actually was the next question that I really wanted to ask you. Kind of, if you can help us, or if you want to kind of reveal your secret sauce for helping SaaS startups really scale. But I think you've already mentioned 2 points. One is learning about the market, talking to people a lot, and then second about having your personal brand. Is there anything else that founders can do to kind of break into the sales for their SaaS startup?
Yeah, one of the main processes and formulas that my clients follow is something called the perfect deal process. It's a process that I created back in my first SaaS that made it really easy for us to close a high percentage of our demos. And the perfect deal process, the deal is an acronym, DEAL, and it really refers to the 4 things that you've got to do in your sales process and on your sales calls if you want that prospect to move forward. Number 1, the D is discover. You've got to be really good at discovery, which is more than just seeing if there's a fit. There's several pieces to it. If you get really good at that, you're going to get them emotional about their current situation. They'll realize they have that pain we talked about, and they're going to want some solution. Number 2, you need to educate. You need to make sure that your buyers or potential buyers understand some of the market forces that are going on, some of the shifts that have been happening within your industry. That's also going to show them that you know what you're talking about. when you're an educator, people look up to those type of people.
Okay.
So we want to discover, we want to educate, then we want to associate. And this is one that a lot of people forget about. When you're doing a demo, you should be associating your product, your solution to their pain. So if they have a particular pain, show them how your pain is going to, or your solution rather, is going to solve their pain. And when people make that connection, it becomes very easy for them to want the solution. So we've got discover, educate, associate, and then the L in deal is lead. Super, super important for you to take charge, for you to lead the whole process, to lead each conversation, and make sure that they know you are the one that they want to follow. You should be their guide. You should be their consultant. You should be the one helping them solve their problem. No better way to do that than to lead. So discover, educate, associate, and lead. That is the perfect deal process.
Very interesting. Discover as a process is, where you really figure out the pain points, right? You really try to see if, and actually, you pointed out very correctly that this should be more than just the fit, right? This should be about uncovering their pain points, right? Which can get them emotional, and they should really feel it that, okay, this is what is making their life crazy at this point in time. I really want to talk about educate and, want to go deeper into this a little bit. Education in general is very difficult. It seems very easy on the front that, you could have, you have just uncovered their pain points, but education in such is a longer process. It's not something that happens in one interaction or one call, or let's say one meet or one demo, right? How do you suggest people to go about educating their clients or prospects about those pain points, your solution? How do you do that?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not going to happen in one call, especially if your market is not quite understanding exactly how you can help or exactly what's going on out there.
Yeah.
So through your posts, through what you're putting out for content, you should absolutely be addressing some of the shifts that are happening and making sure that your market is aware. Now, obviously, you want to call out shifts that your solution can help overcome. You also want to point out, hey, from these shifts, here are companies who are not making the transition and are failing. And here are companies who are making the transition and succeeding. And of course, those will be your clients or people who are following your process.
Yeah.
And through doing that, your market is going to start to realize over time, okay, this is something that I need to start thinking about. Then when you start talking to them, they get into your ecosystem, and the stuff you're putting out through email to them, the stuff they're seeing in the calls, the stuff they're seeing from your blog or whatever it is, they're going to start to realize this is real. We need to take action on this quickly. And that's partly what helps lower your sales cycle, decrease your sales cycle. One of my clients, he just told me today that he was able to get his sales cycle for his past 2 clients from 18 months to 7 days. And part of that is because of the education. It's amazing. By the way, I can't say that that's going to be everybody. Usually if it's an 18-month sales cycle, we can get it to like 6 to 9 months. Like, let's shorten it. 7 days is crazy. He's been going nuts lately. He's killing it. But it's really a product of following the process and really knowing how to make sure the market understands that they have pain and they need to solve it now.
Very interesting. I think that's a very interesting point of view. And if we can actually go to the next point, which is almost similar to education, where you said lead, right? Associate, I would say, is something that is more like a skill, which people would need to learn, right? And while giving the demos or presenting their product, how do they make sure that they're actually talking about the problems that their clients have and not just dumping the features, right, on the demos? Let's keep that as a skill that people can learn. But looking into the lead part, right? It's still very subjective. How do you really lead your client? Do you really expect someone who is in the sales to kind of become a consultant? And again, this might not happen in just one interaction, and you don't get a lot of interactions with prospects all the time, right? So then can you help us understand this part a little bit better?
Yeah, for sure. So in this perfect deal process, each of those DEAL have 10 facets. It's 10 things that you can follow to do to make sure that you are hitting that particular letter. So in the L, there's 10 things that are very specific on what you can do to make sure that you are taking control. Are you guiding a conversation? Do you have a structure to the call? All of that is super, super important.
Okay.
And when you follow the process, you start to see it work, because so many times we've been taught that the customer is always right. And we've been kind of drilled, that's been drilled into us forever. But really, they're not. they don't know what your product is about. They don't know these shifts. They don't know how you can solve their problems. They don't know even the problem they have when they get on the call. They're not right. And so we need to forget that. If you're a customer service person, great. But in sales, you need to take charge. You need to be the one to step up, lead the conversation, and make sure that your buyers understand how you are going to help them and hear how you're going to make their lives better. That's when you're really leading effectively. And because you're doing that, you're going to close a lot more deals. So many times we think, oh, if I just do whatever they say, they're going to close. It's actually the opposite. People who do that close at the lowest rate. The ones who actually step up and challenge their buyers, share with them what actually is the right way, they are crushing the other people who just back over and say, yeah, whatever you want.
And that's what we really mean about leading, right? Not just giving up on the general perspective about, or the general opinion that the industry has, really challenging and presenting a different way or a consultative way where they can achieve better results through the product or the solution. Is that what you really mean about this?
Precisely. Yep. You nailed it exactly, Ashish.
And once we talk about, let's say the process is in place, right? Scaling it is always scary, right? I would say, you don't know if you get someone else just like the way you do it to kind of continue this going forward. How do you suggest startup founders to think about it? Let's say I have a set process as a startup founder, and I know, I'm closing deals, but it's very difficult for me to get another Ashish or another someone else, right? How do you suggest people go about that?
It's one of the hardest things. A lot of software founders hit a wall right at that point. You've been able to do it yourself. You've been able to generate leads. You've been able to have these great demos. You're closing stuff, but now you're so busy that you need to still work on the rest of your company and all the other things you're trying to figure out. You need someone else to come in and handle these sales for you.
Correct.
Now, one of two things happens. Usually, you can't find somebody who's going to do it as well as you. So you keep doing it and you keep being the one to do it, and you actually burn out. I see that a lot with founders. Or you hand it over and it completely dies and your company goes kaput. So really what we want to do is understand, hey, you were able to get to this point because you have a ton of passion for what you're doing. As a founder, you care so much about your company, and that's all you think about all day, every day. You have so much desire and will to see it succeed that sometimes you can get things to happen. You can get deals closed even without the best process. However, once you turn it over, that next person, they don't have that same level of passion. They don't have the history, or the knowledge, or the care or desire for this company like you do. Correct. Even if you hire well and train well, it's not going to be the same. And so they can't do it on passion. You need to have the process. You need to have a framework. And so many times founders think that they've got their process, but it really isn't structured well enough. It really isn't dialed in so someone else can come in and take over and do just as well. I had this same situation happen. I was rolling, we were doing great, but it was me doing all the sales. I said, okay, we're gonna turn it over. The guy I brought in had a great background, great experience, and he couldn't do anything, couldn't sell anything. And I eventually had to let him go. It was very frustrating for me. And then I realized after the fact, hey, it was my fault. I didn't set him up with the right process. I didn't give him the right formula to be able to succeed. And once I did that and created that formula and the right methods, the next people I brought in weren't as experienced, they didn't have the same background, but they were able to succeed and get to my level because they had the right process. It really all comes back to that.
Makes sense. And you're saying that even being a startup, process becomes very important as soon as you want to scale, right? You can't really scale without having a process in place.
For sure. There's no way you can scale without a process.
Very interesting. Now that everything has moved to remote, Matt, right? Do you think it is a pro or a con for startups? Is it like a better thing or a worse thing for startups to consider?
I think it's better. First of all, notwithstanding the fact that if you have an office, you don't have to have an office, a lot lower cost. So your costs are way down. Plus, if you were going to be home-based per se, then your market, your target prospects, they don't look down on you for it, right? They think it's just normal. Well, that's just kind of what happens these days. And so it's totally okay. You've kind of met everybody else in terms of your professional appearance, so to speak, in terms of our video interviews and demos and such. And so I think it's a good thing. I think it can help startups. I think startups have to be smart about it. They need to make sure that they understand how to manage their team well. They need to make sure they keep the team energized and engaged and keep that camaraderie and culture. And I think if you do that right, you're going to do really, really well with it.
And do you think that this has actually made like a level playing field for everyone else? It does not matter if you're a startup or a big company operating in the same domain.
I don't think it's all the way to level. I think there are certainly some advantages that the existing players will have, but there are also advantages that the startups have. There are certain things that startups are more agile. Startups can do other things quicker. They can institute campaigns quicker. And so it's kind of funny seeing the advantages and disadvantages both the incumbents and the startups have against each other and see how they play out. Watching a market segment and the competitors and players within that segment is really kind of fun.
Makes sense. And at the last, do you really want to share some learning resources with our audiences? Probably, let's say the founders who really want to break into SaaS sales.
Yes. So I actually have a scorecard. It's called the SaaS Sales Scorecard. You can go to saassalesscorecard.com. And what it does, it allows you to plug in all of your metrics, and it'll spit out all of those key metrics, the key KPIs that you need to track if you want your company to scale. It's also going to give you benchmarks to aim for, goals you should hit. You can go to SaaS Sales Scorecard and download that. It's totally free. I just give it away because that's what I've used to build my companies. And it's going to show you the exact metrics that you should be trying to hit for your software company as well.
Very interesting. I think I can try it out myself as well. Thank you for putting
Absolutely. Go grab it. Yeah, you're welcome. I hope it helps.
That's all the questions I had for you today, Matt. This was a really amazing session. I'm taking a lot of information out from here. I hope the audiences will too. I really thank you for coming again on Sales Gambit.
My pleasure, Ashish. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone. This is Ashish Santhalia signing off. Seeing you in next episode. Have a good day.